The Grange.
Where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day.
The first organization that farmers banded together in was the National Grange. Founded in 1867 by 7 co-founders, the organization was set up very similar to a Masonic order, and it was founded among many of the same principles. It was formed to unite private citizens in improving the economic and social position of the nation's farm population. The Grange was actually the short form of the long name, the National Grange of the Orders of Patrons of Husbandry. Initially, the membership included mostly southern farmers, however different than other similar organizations because it included teens and women equally into the organization. The initial banding together was done to counteract the railroads. Numbers increased most dramatically after the Panic of 1873, when farmers were having the worst times. By the middle of the 1870s, with close to 1 million members, the Grange started having its most successes. Many joined the Grange because it is a local organization, part of being part of a community. They didn't care about the beliefs, and some of the Grange buildings were infiltrated by pro-railroad people, doctors, people who weren't farmers. The Grange started to fall apart after it got so many members. It was kind of inevitable with its colossal side, similar to the United Labor Front of earlier days. Its political activism and successes are most remembered for its battles against the railroads. Because of the large swaths of land given by U.S. to the railroads, it gave the railroads monopolies on farm goods, and they could then control supply. By controlling supply, the farmers were powerless, and middlemen could take exorbitant rates against them. To counteract this, the farmers started to enact Granger laws, passed by state governments to lower freight rates, establish state railroad commissions to regulate railroads and other public utilities. And then the railroads weren't having any of this being controlled by the state government, so they fought back. They started to repeal the legislation, and ultimately the big decision came in Munn versus Illinois of 1876. This case involved famous opinion delivered by Chief Justice Morrison Remick Waite. In it, he upheld legislation proposed by the National Grange to regulate grain elevator rates, declaring that business interests used for public good must be regulated by the government. Instead, the decision focused on the question of whether or not a private company could be regulated in the public interest. The court's decision was that it could, if the private company could be seen as a utility operating in the public interest. These Granger laws and Munn versus Illinois were the most important legacy of early farmers and the workers at the Grange. However, there was other things, including a large campaign for rural free delivery of the mail, because before farmers had to pick up their mail in town. But although this might seem inconsequential to you, it was not just a mail. It also led road development to bring the mail to farmers, because you had to have a certain standard of roads to bring the mail. And this, in turn, increased land values from about $2 an acre to $3 an acre. Another important legacy was the farm credit system, a system that provides credit and loan to agricultural-related industry. Today, it's massive, and the borrowers owe some $86 billion to it currently. Also included was progressive taxation. They were very large advocates of progressive federal income tax, to the end that all wealth may bear its just an equal proportion on the expenses of the government. These were some of the early legacies of the Grange. However, the Grange couldn't last because of its impossibly large size.
The Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union was formed in 1888, and in 1890 it merged with the Southern Alliance, forming the second greatest organization of the populist movement. In 1885, the United States Department of Agriculture was founded, which wanted equal rights for all and special privileges for none. The Interstate Commerce Law of 1887 entailed reasonable railroad rates, published rates, outlawed secret rebates, and made price discrimination against small markets illegal. Tom Watson began the support for the Farmers Alliance platform and was elected to the House of Representatives as an Alliance Democrat in 1890. He was the only Southern Alliance Democrat to abandon the Democratic caucus and instead attending the First Populist Party. The Populist Party advocated the public ownership of the railroads, steamship lines, and telephone and telegraph systems. It also supported the free and unlimited coinage of silver and abolition of national banks, a system of graduated income tax, and the direct election of United States senators. Watson also tried to overcome racial divides. He supported the right of African American men to vote. Watson later became a virulent racist and anti-Semite due to the failures of the Populist Party. Mary Elizabeth Lease was also involved in the Populist Party. She famously advised Kansas farmers to raise less corn and more hell. She believed that large business would make the people of America as slaves, saying, "Wall Street owns the country. It is no longer a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, but a government of Wall Street, by Wall Street, and for Wall Street." She influenced Kansas farmers against high mortgage interest rates and railroad rates, which placed her at the forefront of the Populist Party. Ignatius Donnelly undertook a foray into national politics in 1892, writing the preamble of the People's Party, Omaha Platform. He was nominated for Vice President of the United States in 1900 by the People's Party. He was an advocate of free silver, abolition of national banks, a graduated income tax, and direct election of senators. He also wanted civil service reform and an 8-hour workday. The Ocala demands, adopted by the Ocala Convention,
were a massive list of demands, some of them which are outlined here.
Wabash, St. Louis and Pacific Railroad Company versus Illinois, led to the Munn versus Illinois. The Supreme Court's decision severely limited the rights of states to control interstate commerce. It led to the creation of the Interstate Commerce Commission. This court decision clarified the direct versus indirect test. This was one of the first instances in government assuming responsibility for economic affairs that had previously been delegated to the states.
In 1892, a more significant agrarian movement, the Populist movement, developed as the Grange declined in influence. Western farmers found themselves in a tough economic situation. Although mechanization substantially increased production, the basic economic laws of supply and demand resulted in dramatically decreased prices for the farm commodities that farmers grew. Farmers were gung-ho on buying new farming equipment, which was very expensive at the time. This resulted in large farmer debt. This combination of large debts lowered prices for their crops, further aggravated the farmers' economic situation. It was clearly very difficult for farmers to pay off debts to northeastern and European creditors. Furthermore, the party of northern big business, the Republican Congress of 1890, passed the McKinley Tariff, one of the highest tariffs in American history, in order to protect domestic businesses from foreign competition. The tariff proved quite detrimental to farmers. While it did indeed protect domestic manufacturers, it forced farmers to sell grains in competitive, unprotected world markets. In an economic climate where the dollar was very strong, the farmers had the feeling that they were paying back a lot more money than they had really borrowed. The Populist Party's response to this economic malaise was to increase the supply of money. The United States was following the gold standard at the time, which tied the amount of money in circulation to the gold reserves in the Treasury. The Populist Party viewed the gold standard as the enemy. The Greenback Party had earlier advocated simply printing more paper money without any metal asset to back it. The Populist platform, however, introduced the idea of backing money with silver as well as gold in a respective 16-to-1 ratio. They were therefore called bimetallists and free silverites. The farmers and working-class people had their frustrations and disappointments climaxed in unbelievable heights during the Panic of 1893. However, the Populist platform never got very popular with most workers. In 1896, William Jennings Bryan was nominated for president by the Populist and Democratic Party. He attacked the gold standard in his famous Cross of Gold speech. Bryan took his message directly to the people, delivering 500 speeches to 7 million people during a 100-day railroad tour. Republican campaign manager Mark Hanna outspent Bryan 10-to-1 and led nominee William McKinley's famous Front Porch campaign. McKinley, who supported the gold standard and high tariffs, found support in the Northeast, in the Midwest, with relatively prosperous farmers, the middle class, and among railroad and factory workers. Bryan's loss in the presidential election brought an abrupt end to the Populist movement. The Populists were never able to become a viable third party or form significant strategic alliances with urban workers. The U.S. economy finally began to recover in 1896. After the election of McKinley, confidence was restored with the Klondike Gold Rush, and the economy began 10 years of rapid growth until the Panic of 1907. Although the influences of the Populists drastically waned as the power base shifted from the farm to the cities, a large number of populist initiatives were taken up by the Progressive movement and were eventually adopted.